So this video is going to be a little bit of a rant about AI and the practice of law. Um, right now, the state of AI is that it's pretty good at some things that can be used for legal purposes, and it's really bad at others. And right now, every single day, I'm getting an alert from my research tools about lawyers who have gotten in trouble with courts because they're submitting briefs that include fake cases and fake quotes that were made up by ChatGPT or some other LLM. And this is incredible to me because I really can't understand how it's happening for attorneys and how they keep letting it happen. For people without a lawyer, I can understand that. You can imagine that lay people who are plugging in things to ChatGPT might not recognize that a case that it gives back to them is made up or doesn't exist. If you don't have a lawyer, you're still obligated to follow the federal rules of procedure. And among those rules, there's a requirement that you verify the accuracy of things that you submit to the court. And that includes making sure that cases that you cite are real. You know, I get it that if you're not a lawyer, I can understand how you might submit filings that cite to fake cases. If you are a lawyer, I don't get it. And let me explain why. So, quickly about me, for the first 6.5 years of my career, I was a litigator at a large firm here in LA called Greenberg Traurig. Since then, since 2019, I've run my own practice. I don't litigate as much anymore, but a lot of what I'm going to talk about still applies. So there's really like two reasons why I don't understand how lawyers are submitting briefs with fake cases in them. First of all, at my last firm, anything that was getting filed with a court went through multiple levels or multiple stages where those sorts of errors would have been detected and fixed. First of all, if you're a junior associate writing a brief, you're going to be using the tools that the firm pays for, like Westlaw and or Lexis, to do your legal research. And part of the reason why you get paid so much is because you're good at using those tools to find cases that support your argument and include them in your briefs. That's like a fundamental part of the job. So any competent associate is going to be using those tools, finding real good cases that support the arguments, and including them in the briefs. Because there's inherently, or there should be, like a fear that if you miscite something or you cite bad law, even if the cases exist or they didn't go the right way for the position that you're trying to argue, the senior associate or the partner might catch that, and then you're in real trouble. Beyond that, the next level of review is if I'm a mid-level or a senior associate reviewing some junior's work, a lot of the times I would go through and pull those cases that are cited in the draft brief just to make sure that we're using the best quote from that case or that it does actually support the argument we're trying to make. And partners might do the same thing, depending on how busy they are and how involved they like to be in the review process. They're probably looking at some of those cases at least once in a while also. But the final step before anything went out the door and was filed with the court was there'd be a paralegal whose job it was to cite check every single reference in a brief, a statute, a case, whatever it is, to make sure not only is the quote accurate to the word and is the citation accurate to the page. And if it's not, they'll make those changes so that the brief works. That happened 100% of the time. And if the paralegal is paying attention at all, they're going to flag a case that doesn't exist. And working in that environment, I understood that to be just like the basic minimum of competent practice. So there was really no, like, if a fake case got cited in something that was filed with the court, there were multiple failures that would have had to happen in order for that result to occur. The other thing is, in litigation, you can expect that opposing counsel is going to be combing through everything that you cited to try to flip it around against you. And that's exactly how so many of these fake case situations are brought to the court's attention in the first place. It's opposing counsel is reading a brief, pulling up some of the cases that are cited, and realizing they can't because the case doesn't exist, and then telling the court, like, hey, look at this. Looks like they're using AI. Looks like they cited fake cases. You should sanction them for doing that. Anytime that I would get a brief that I needed to respond to, maybe it's a motion to dismiss that I have to write an opposition to, or maybe it's an opposition brief and I'm writing a reply. Like, part of the basic practice was to go through and look at every case that was cited in that brief to see if there's a problem with it or some way I can distinguish it to make my argument stronger. Like, maybe a quote sounds good in their brief, but if you look at the case, it actually came out the wrong way for them and helps our argument. Or maybe they're using a quote that in context doesn't really help what they're saying, and I want to show that to the court. Or maybe the case was later reversed on appeal and the opposing counsel didn't bother to mention that. Certainly, if I'm pulling up a case and I don't find it, like, I'm going to raise that. And it's amazing to me that lawyers who rely on ChatGPT without checking their own sites don't expect opposing counsel to do that. It's really just like basic competence for litigation. And so this keeps happening for small firms, and even some mid-size, and at least one big firm that I'm aware of has gotten in trouble for this. And so far, the most amount of sanctions I've seen, I think, was like $10,000. Most of the time, it's like the court essentially penalizes the lawyer a couple $1,000s and admonishes them like, hey, don't do this again. But that's apparently not enough. Like, the publication of those opinions and the news around it and people like me tweeting about it all the time hasn't stemmed the tide at all. Literally every day, there's someone getting in trouble with the court for citing fake AI-generated cases. I don't know what it's going to take to stop that. I think maybe more penalties or consequences with the state bar that put someone's license in jeopardy. But in the meantime, when people talk about, oh, AI is going to replace all lawyer jobs and all this, maybe, but certainly not with the tech that we have right now, because as it stands, LLMs are terrible at doing legal research, and a lot of attorneys out there are terrible at even noticing that. So I don't really have much of a conclusion other than to just state my disbelief with all this. If this is a topic that's of interest to you, please consider liking and subscribing, and let me know what you think in the comments, and I'll see you in the next video.